The fallen state is amazing. Subscribe now.
Hold on, my name is
like 90 going north, 90 going north. People running around like 90 going north. It's so amazing to see it, folks. Insane people screaming and yelling like 90 going north.
Welcome to the fallen state. I am Jesse Lee Peterson. Today we have a debate on guns and the Second Amendment. I'm really excited to have with me Destiny, a Twitch streamer, a gamer, a YouTube personality. And on my left, Vince is back. Vince James of the Red Elephant. Do you guys know each other?
I think we've talked before briefly, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah?
I think briefly on someone's stream, yeah.
Oh yeah, you like him?
Not really, no.
What do you dislike about him?
I guess we'll get into that today over the gun stuff. Huh?
Amazing. And so both of you have been on my radio show, and it's the first time you've been on the fallen state. So do you believe that human beings are in a fallen state?
Not necessarily.
I'm already super grumpy because I see this guy with this fucking binder here. Already has me fucking tilted, dude. I can't even fucking believe this shit.
On the fallen state. So do you believe that human beings are in a fallen state?
Not necessarily, no.
No, you don't believe that? How about you?
I would say, yeah. I'd say some.
And what does
Why
that
didn't you dress formally so I could match the jeans and fleece sweatshirt that this guy brought? What do you mean?
mean to be in a fallen state?
To me, and I know you've explained this to me before, and I forget your exact definition, but
Right.
to me,
Wait, what the fuck? Hold on. There you go.
a fallen state, I guess, in the regard that you're putting it in, would be like a fallen spiritual state.
Why you don't believe human beings are in a fallen state? They act so weird.
I mean, weird is subjective. I think we're in an era of unprecedented access to technology, wealth, opportunity, education, like all across the world in levels we've never seen before. Global conflict seems to be at like a historical low. There's a relative stability around the world. We definitely have problems, but I wouldn't say we're anywhere close to a fallen state, not compared to where we've come from.
Amazing. You are a gamer, right?
That was a solid answer. Okay.
Sometimes, yeah.
So does that mean you sit around and play games?
Sometimes, yeah.
How old are you?
30 years old.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
You're never going to get a woman playing games.
Aren't you still not married?
Right.
Okay.
But I had women already, though.
I mean, I don't know if this is relevant to the discussion, but
What are we supposed to say here? I fuck bitches? Like, what am I supposed to, how am I supposed to respond to this? Like, this, I don't know what, I don't know what avenue I can possibly go down here to not like.
But I'm just warning you, you're getting old sitting there playing games. They're passing you by.
I'm doing okay. I
Oh.
appreciate the concern, though, Jesse.
Okay. Well, if I find one, I'll let them know to knock on your door.
Any woman that you would find, I don't think I would want at my door, Jesse.
Let's get into the debates about guns and the Second Amendment, all right? What's your stance on gun control?
I think that there are problems with access to firearms in the U.S. today, and I think there are a couple of pretty simple changes that we could make to U.S. policy to kind of alleviate some of the problems we have with deaths related to firearms in the U.S. today.
Give me an example of problems with guns today.
People killing themselves, people killing other people.
Fuck off. Pokey, are you done with your shit? If you want to play, message me on Discord, okay? Because I would rather do anything than this shit.
People dying accidentally, children killing themselves with firearms, stuff like that.
Is it the gun fault?
THICC9INE is now a Tier 1 subscriber.
Okay.
The gun is like a force amplifier.
What do you mean?
So somebody might have a bad idea or an inclination to do something bad, and a firearm gives you the ability to do more bad than you would otherwise. For instance, if I wanted to go on a killing spree with a knife, I'm probably not going to be able to kill as many people as I could with a handgun or a rifle.
That's amazing. What do you say to that?
it's interesting because the gun that they're talking about banning the most is the AR-15, and it only kills about 30 people a year. Oh, well, the people with AR-15s only kill about 30 people a year versus what he mentioned, knives and hammers kill many more people per year, according to the FBI. So, I don't know. It's interesting that the gun that kills the least amount of people is the one that they want to ban, but I think that there's more nefarious reasons for that, in my opinion.
Okay, rule number one of gun debates. Rule number one. If you don't know anything about guns, shut the fuck up, okay? Too many fucking liberals have no fucking idea what they're talking about when it comes to guns, okay? If you don't know anything about them, shut the fuck up. Number two, never get baited into talking about AR-15s, okay? Are they scary? Yeah, wow, they're real scary. They're real spooky, but you know what? They don't kill fuck all in the US, okay? They really don't. It's like 50 deaths a year to assault rifles, whatever the fuck that means. Don't ever get baited into trying to defend some weird Democrat-supported assault rifle ban, okay? It means fuck all about anything, okay?
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Rifles don't kill very many people in the year compared to other types of violence. The most, some of the most exaggerated violent events tend to happen with rifles, like the Las Vegas shooting, for instance. But I mean, there are plenty of school shootings. I think the Virginia Tech shooter, I want to say, used handguns.
Right.
Handguns, though, are typically or not typically, but they're definitely by far the most deadly firearm for shootings around the U.S.
Have you ever owned a gun?
Yeah, I have a Glock 17 and a Mosin.
And have you shot it before?
Yeah, of course.
You're not afraid of guns, right?
No, definitely.
Oh, okay. And you would never just get up, because if you didn't touch your gun, it would never shoot anyone or anything, right?
That's not necessarily true.
Your gun would shoot someone on its own?
Not on its own, but somebody could find the gun. Somebody could break into your house and use the gun. A child could find the gun. I mean,
that's amazing. But they can also find a knife. You have knives at home?
They could, but accidentally shooting yourself with a knife or accidentally killing yourself with a knife is probably a lot more difficult to do than with a firearm you found.
Amazing. Do you own a gun?
Yes.
Have you ever shot a gun?
Yes.
And are you afraid of them?
No.
Why do they blame the gun rather than the people?
I think people in general, human beings, are always looking for something to blame something on, right? Because they can't necessarily explain evil, right? They can't explain something as crazy as someone walking.
It is so hard. I want you to know that it took all of my willpower right here not to get sucked into a philosophy debate. Well, what do you mean by evil, sir? It took all of my willpower to stay on guns here. So you better, I better get some clappers for that one.
To a school and shooting young, innocent children. So humans, I think, inherently want to try to find something to blame. And we're seeing the same exact problem in London right now. So London has banned handguns, the UK in its entirety, pretty much for the most part. It's very difficult to obtain a firearm legally in the city of London. However, they're now putting metal detectors in schools to detect knives because people are killing each other with knives over there. They're talking about banning tip knives. Doctors are calling for knife amnesty programs over there. And they even have, knife turn-in bins on the street in the city of London.
One common thing that people will do is they'll present something as a negative and they'll talk about it as a negative, and then they'll sit there and they'll try to get you to explain why they're correct, or they assume that they're correct. So for instance, people will do this with like, well, in London, they're trying to put up detectors to keep knives out of school. So what do you think about that, right? And your default response is like, oh, fuck, yeah, he's right. Like, oh, shit, well, what about that, right? It's okay sometimes to just own things, right? Like, oh, they want to keep kids from bringing in like combat knives to school. Okay, is that a problem? Like, should kids be bringing in combat knives and shit to school? Like, do they need to? I don't think that's a problem. Is that a bad thing? Like,
police department just did a study, a gang study, and they're trying to get rid of that study because Sadiq Khan, the mayor, called that study racist because it determined that the majority of the gang violence...
Also, if you didn't know, this guy fucking hates black people. Everything he has to do with guns is a dog whistle to getting rid of black people in the United States.
It determined that the majority of the gang violence, the majority of the stabbings, is perpetrated by black teens, and the victims are black teens. So they have a big knife problem there. They just surpassed the murder rate in New York City recently, and New York City has 900,000 legally owned guns compared to London, which has, nearly zero. It's negligible, the amount of legally owned guns that London has. So it's a difficult situation, but we can get into it, certainly.
How do you respond?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to deal with concepts of evil. I don't think we can legislate against making people not evil. I don't know if I necessarily believe that people kill themselves or kill other people because they're evil. It seems like this is usually pretty predictable based on a set of circumstances related to their environment, whether you have one parent in the household, whether you have access to drugs, depending on where you live, the type of education, your socioeconomic class. There's a lot of different factors that will impact whether or not, I guess, you have the proclivity to kill somebody. I mean, I guess it's possible. I noticed it's kind of like your theme is to always go back to demographics and gang violence. I don't know what the
statistics show that's true.
Sure, I don't know what the prescription there is. Like, what is the suggestion then? I'm curious.
And what to do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for instance, Sadiq Khan in London is reinstituting the stop and frisk that he called racist previously. So he's trying to do whatever. I mean, he's trying to go and get knives off. I mean, they're having people going to...
I'm glad I did this. Put the pressure on him. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to deport all the black people? Like, tell me what you would like to do. Forcing him to... this is something that I don't do enough. And actually, I got a really great piece of advice. This came from Stalled in chat, the journalist guy, who told me that it's really good sometimes to force people to actually defend...
You're owning a Mosin? Bolt action?
To force people... Bolt action rifles are cool, okay? People can... fuck, what did I say? Oh, forcing the other person to state a position and defend it is really important. I don't do that enough to people. I usually just let them ramble on.
Schools. in London. They have this hashtag knife-free campaign in London, where they're putting it out in the media. They're having people go to schools and visit people and tell young children why it's dangerous to bring knives to school. So that just, London is the perfect example, because it just tells me that it's not the tool that the person uses to kill someone or perpetrate harm. It's the person, and it's the people. It's city cons going into the cities and literally stopping gang members and taking knives away from them or machetes and things like that. I mean, you would concede that it's mostly gang members who perpetrate gun violence in the country, correct?
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Okay,
in the
so I
United
mean,
States.
if it's and with mostly illegally obtained firearms purchased on the street, you would concede that as well.
That's
right?
not true. No, I don't believe so.
Well, even Michael Bloomberg would say that. Even Joe Scarborough has said that over 90% of all shootings of all crime guns in the U.S. and these quoting statistics are illegally obtained on the street.
They might say that, but that's not true.
That is true.
How do you know
Most
it's not
gun
true?
violence
It's not true
is
because it comes
perpetrated
from
by
the
illegally
20
obtained firearms.
Sure, so that comes from a 2016 report that the Bureau of Justice Statistics did,
Right.
and it's oftentimes miscited. The reality is that 90% of guns that are used to commit crimes aren't purchased from a retail source, but only about 43% of those are illegally obtained on the black market.
Oh, I knew that source. Oh, yikes. Oh, shit. Oh, I knew that one. Oh, he's like, oh, shit. What? Oh, he definitely miscited that motherfucker.
20% of those are obtained from family members or other sources where they have been legally acquired. For instance, in Chicago, I think 60% of firearms can be traced back to legally acquired gun shops that are just outside the city.
Right, so I understand what you're saying. You're saying originally the guns always purchased legally, but is it illegal in Chicago, for instance? Is it illegal to transfer a firearm from Indiana to Chicago? Is that against the law?
Not necessarily. It depends on how the sale is done from one private person to another. This is what liberals complain about all the time.
In the city of Chicago, it is illegal to transfer a weapon and bring it to Chicago and hold it without going to a gun shop and making it in the city of Chicago.
Sure, in the city of Chicago, but
he makes these like so hyper specific. Like, well, in the specific city of Chicago, doing a private sale. I don't actually know if that's even illegal. I don't know. I fucking hate it when I know like the broad picture, and then we get into some weird. It's like conspiracy theory. Like, well, you say 6 million Jews were killed, but actually, did you know that this one gravedigger in 1947 actually dug out and disproved all of your things? It was like, I don't fucking know about anything you're talking about, dude. Like, ugh.
You can transfer firearms from one person to another without having to do like having a federal license or doing some sort of value.
Godstiny.
In the city of Chicago.
What if you purchase it before going to Chicago?
But that's breaking the law. You're bringing the gun into the city of Chicago from Indiana. That's breaking the law. Criminals don't follow laws. That's my point.
Sure, but all of these guns are sourced.
And then the gang members buy it.
Doesn't even let me finish. That's not what you fucking said before. You said before that all of the 90% of the fires are bought in like the black market or some shit. These guns are being bought legally and then brought in illegally. That's the problem.
Gang members on the streets.
So if the guns are sourced legally first, I mean, obtaining them illegally after might be a thing, but the statement that 90% of guns are bought and sold in the black market when a friend could buy you a firearm and then you could just get it from them paints a much different picture than the idea that all these guns are being purchased illegally. There are quite a few that are purchased illegally, sure, but that number is far lower than the 90% that's
Why is it hard to believe that more guns are brought into our country and sold illegally than the guns that you claim are still being bought at gun stores? Because we have so many illegal aliens coming in now, and they're bringing guns and they're selling them they're selling them in the urban areas, especially. In Chicago, they have some of the strictest gun laws you ever want to have, but yet the black on black violence is out of control.
Yeah, because most of the guns are brought in from out of the city. Yeah.
But that's illegal. To bring it from out of the city into Chicago, you're already breaking the law. So why would more laws stop that from happening? In my personal opinion, you're just restricting the people who like to follow the laws from having an easy time of purchasing a weapon for their leisure or whatever the case may be. I mean, you said something during the Joe Biggs debate. You said, quote, the United States has more violent gun crime than any other country in the world right now. Do you still believe that to be true?
Compared to Western countries, I believe that's true.
But you said than any other country in the world
that's probably
right now.
not true. If you want to go to a place like Honduras or something, I'm sure they're more violent. Typically for the United States, I try not to compare ourselves.
I know what country he was going to immediately because he does this shit all the time. Oh, fuck me. Why is it, okay, well, you think that our people are starving in America? Well, actually, if you compare us to North Korea, our people are pretty, like, it's always like some dumb shit. Like, let's go to like some very violent, conflict-ridden country and compare ourselves to them. Like,
to countries like Honduras or Venezuela. Because I think we should probably shoot to be a little bit higher than that, no pun intended.
Is that like a race thing or?
Why would it be a race thing?
I don't
Do you
know.
think that a country like Honduras or Venezuela should be what we aim to be slightly better than?
I mean, Brazil has higher gun violence than we do
Sure.
here.
How about countries like France or Germany or the United Kingdom or
Well,
Spain?
if you want to look in France and Germany and the United Kingdom, it says, according to the FBI here, if you want to...
I hate that he does this. I can't believe that he's allowed to have a fucking binder.
compare us to those countries, you have to go into the statistics. According to the FBI here, this is from the FBI's website, we have 33,000 violent street gangs here in America. Per capita, per 100,000, that's 9.8 per 100,000 in America, versus all of Europe, which has 0.674 per 100,000 gangs to people. So we have many more gangs, many more thousands of gangs to people here than any of those other developed countries do. So you've already conceded that most of the shootings in America are perpetrated by gang members. So why wouldn't you concede that this is the reason why we have higher gun violence here in this country? I mean, it's not even close.
Why didn't you take out your phone or ask? Because I feel weird. It's like, oh yeah, well actually, according to a 1997 study by the FBI Homicide Statistics. Wait, like I don't know. It just feels weird. I don't want to. I don't know. I wasn't in the mind space where I was gonna have like a source with me to like start reading off like stats or whatever.
Be the reason, but you can take a multifaceted approach to these problems. If anything, I could argue you're making my point for me. If there are so many gangs in the United States, maybe we should restrict access to firearms more as a result of that.
But only the ones who follow the law. For instance, I just went to Las Vegas. They have a large outdoor shop there, Bass Pro Shop.
Did you see him? Did you see him trip up there? Like, ah, shit. That's another one I like too. Hey, actually, if you think about it, you're kind of making my argument for me. If there are so many gangs here, maybe we really should restrict access to firearms.
Approach to these problems. If anything, I could argue you're making my point for me. If there are so many gangs in the United States, maybe we should restrict access to firearms more as a result of that.
But only the ones who follow the law. For instance, I just went to Las Vegas. They have a large outdoor shop there, Bass Pro Shop. Right there at Silverton Casino, I believe it is. Now, they have very cheap ammunition. I mean, we're talking like $7 for a 50-round box of 9mm ammo. I would love to be able to purchase that ammo and bring it home with me for my leisure here, but I can't. That's a felony in California to be able to transfer ammunition from Las Vegas to here. So I follow the law. Gang members aren't going to do that. You've already said that they're bringing guns that whatever they purchase in Indiana and then into the city of Chicago, which is already breaking the law. So my thing is this is the Second Amendment right. It's in the Constitution. We should be trying. It's more important to protect gun rights than it is to control gun ownership, in my personal opinion. And I think we have to do that without sacrificing people's rights. I think we have to find another way to be able to quell gang violence in this country, however that may be, because there's many illegally obtained guns flowing around in Chicago. It's
like how? Fuck, I don't think I asked him.
It's a trafficking issue. And so we have to find a way to get those guns off the street, which they're already illegally obtained. They're already illegally possessed. So we have to find a way to do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know the best approach to that. And I don't know if you have any suggestions either, but that would be my...
Yeah, I mean, curbing the ability of people to purchase firearms legally would reduce the circulation of illegal firearms if we understand that at least half of these are coming initially from legal sources. Reducing the amount of people that can purchase a firearm legally means they're less likely to give it to a friend or another gang member. That's one thing. Gun buyback programs have been proposed in several areas and have been done with varying levels of success across different areas. You bring up the UK as an example. They have one of the lowest firearm homicide rates in the world. Now, they do kill people with knives as well, which is a problem that they're dealing with. But
don't we care about the lives?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, you tackle knives next, you tackle gang violence here. It's a multifaceted problem.
What does this even mean? I wonder if they even classify gangs the same way. One of the problems with comparing, I learned this when I was doing a lot of research on this. One of the problems with comparing stats from one area to another is like in the United States, the way that we compare, like when you talk about something like assaults, like the amount of assaults in Europe versus the amount of assaults in America, the way that even different European countries like quantify or qualify what is an assault is going to be different than how we do it in America. So it's really hard sometimes to compare these. I don't know what they consider a gang in the UK or they consider a gang like in the United States. It wouldn't, I mean, we probably do have more gangs, I think, maybe. I don't know. I'm not even sure, actually. I don't know. I could see it going either way. Not to mention the fact that this is probably like a homemade graph too, yeah.
Let me ask, why did the founding fathers make the Second Amendment?
I think in their to me, you're asking me? Yeah. I think at that time, it was because of, tyranny, government tyranny, and remaining sovereign and things like that. I think at that time, yeah.
Why do you think the founding fathers made the Second Amendment?
I'm pretty sure that's true. I don't think it was initially envisioned as a way to protect yourself from like a criminal or a burglar, but I think it had more to do with arming citizens.
Are you concerned about government tyranny?
No, I think that concept is a little antiquated at this point.
Why do you think that?
Because we live in a different day and age. The idea of like a full-scale revolt against the government or whatever just seems unlikely or unwieldy.
But why do you think, even under Barack Obama, the Father Messiah, they tried so hard to disarm the good folks, the people who keep the law? Because when you create these laws, the innocent people are the ones who are punished for them, not the criminals.
Well, it seems like greater access to firearms end up punishing the more innocent people anyways. For instance, in every state where they've expanded right to carry laws, you've seen like an uptick in violence by like 12 to 15%. In places where firearms become more easily accessible to families, children are more likely to kill themselves with firearms. And just having a firearm in your house makes you much more likely to kill yourself with it. So it seems like expanding the ability for the innocent people or the good guys to own
firearms. I don't believe that
firearms.
to be true, but if it was true, it's not my fault that...
I like how this guy, it feels like a shitty Hollywood movie. This guy's like grappling with me while this dude is like finding his like fucking sword on the ground or some shit. What the fuck? Please, I can't listen to you any faster. Should I? Really?
Someone in their home are not sober-minded enough to do the right thing with their gun. I shouldn't have to be punished for that.
But you are anyway, whether you want to be or not.
But I should be. It's
but
wrong
you
for
are.
the government.
If somebody kills themselves and they leave a child that has to be taken care of, you're going to be paying for that child with your taxes. If somebody injures themselves and they have to go to the hospital, you're going to be paying.
But I shouldn't have to. That's the problem with the government.
Are you talking do you want to abolish the federal government and all taxation, or
smaller government? Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that's not where I'm at, but...
I just have to, you said that places with concealed carry laws, you see an uptick in violence. Well, I mean, we're looking at, this is New Hampshire, Maine, North Dakota, Idaho, Vermont, Wyoming, all have permitless concealed carry. You can carry a weapon without additional permits. And their homicide rate is below 3 per 100,000. In New Hampshire, for instance, it's 1 per 100,000. And these, all of these 6 states have permitless concealed carry. These are the homicide rates.
Sure, so 2 things. One is the homicide rate and the percent white. I have no idea why those would ever be on the same graph.
Well, because if you look at the other states with permitless concealed carry,
I understand. I'm just saying that those 2 numbers probably don't belong on the same graph like that, firstly. Secondly, that graph doesn't tell you whether or not the homicide rate increased once right to carry laws were introduced, which
I'm not saying that it does. I'm just saying that I'm just trying to touch on your, you said that concealed carry laws increase violent crime, and I'm just trying to show you that it obviously doesn't.
Why do you put these 2 numbers on the same fucking graph? Oh my god, I don't even fucking know.
But
I'm not saying that it decreases
but an increase is a comparison from one point in time to the next, and that graph is only showing you a certain
This has been
state in time.
consistent over the past 20 years. They've had the same homicide rate for the past 20 years.
All 5 of those states homicide
6
rates.
of these states homicide rates.
Well, the meta-analysis.
This is where I was tempted to pull my phone, because I have these studies like saved on my Google. Well, like I have these on my fucking thing where it's like where there's like an increase in what is it called, RTC. The best available evidence using different statistical approaches, panel data regression, and synthetic control with varying strengths and shortcomings and with different model specifications all suggest that the net effect of state adoption of RTC, which is right to carry laws, is a substantial increase in violent crime, 13 to 50%. So this was a meta-analysis done of a ton of different studies to compare like the before and after right to carry laws. But like, I mean, like he's just telling me it's not true. I don't know if I can like take out my phone, right?
That I am familiar with that have gone into this and dug through it and analyzed it show that there's like a 12 to 15% uptick in
Except
crime.
for the 90s.
Also,
I mean, in the
Cool.
1990s, crime across the Western world, which still many people can't explain why it happened, but in all Western countries, crime in the 1990s was higher.
Where did you get your stats from?
I mean, I could pull out the source, but I mean, it seems to be not very well debated that.
Fuck! Should I just take out my phone and start showing them? This is so fucking awkward. I don't know what to do here.
Right to
I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do.
Carry laws have caused an uptick in violence.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that they don't. I don't say. What I'm saying is right to carry, concealed carry, permitless concealed carry, constitutional carry, whatever you want to call it, does not increase violence in these states.
So here's the problem. He's using the word increase. So what he's doing is you have state A and state B. State A has 5% violent crime. State B has 10%. State A has right to carry laws, and state B doesn't. He's saying, well, look, this proves that right to carry laws don't increase violent crime. But the problem is when you talk about an increase in violent crime, it's an increase from one point in time to another, right? So the problem is it's possible then that at the state with 5% crime, it used to be 3% or 2%, and then right to carry laws boosted it to 5%, right? That's what he's not understanding. When you use the word increase and you're talking about a reference in time, you can't just show a graph of every state and say, oh, well, look, obviously they don't cause an increase, because you're not showing an increase or a decrease or a trend at all. You're just showing one particular point in time.
States did not.
I understand what you're saying, but that graph doesn't say that.
It does say that. It says 2.6 per 100,000 homicide.
What if it was 1.6 before?
The national average.
What if it was 1.6 before?
Well, there's New Hampshire at 1 per 100,000.
What if it
He doesn't understand what I'm saying.
was at 0.5 before?
This has been consistent over the past 20 years.
But your graph doesn't demonstrate that.
Well, I can show you
and there is a
statistics on
very
that.
easy.
But I'm just saying that
there's also a very easy
not
correlation with the more lax a state is with their gun laws, whether or not you need a permit to conceal carry, whether or not you need a permit to buy certain firearms. The more lax a state is, the more likely you are to die in that state due to a firearm as well. It's a pretty easily observed.
I mean, that's strange because it looks like you're more likely to die in a place like Chicago, for instance, than
always Chicago. Always running back to that. It's like the Republican dream is to like shit all over Chicago. Holy fuck.
Or Maine or Idaho or any of these other states with permitless concealed carry. You are. They have higher homicide rates.
Mass shootings since 1982. why are there like 10 states on this? What is this? I don't even know what this graph is. Versus homogenous states. Oh, homogenous means more white people. So one, I don't even know what the definition of mass shootings used here is, because I think the FBI defines it as 4 more people killed in a single instance of gun violence. I don't know if that's the one they're using here. 1, 2, this isn't adjusted per population, right? Like, actually, I don't even know if this is good. Okay, so population of Kansas versus California. Can I get both of these listed? So Kansas has about 3 million people. California has about 40 million people. So we would expect California, just going by like just a pure adjustment without doing like a cross section or whatever, to have about 13 times as many mass shootings as Kansas. So like the numbers aren't even. If you adjust it like in a per capita, they're not even that off. What about like for something like Florida, population of Florida? Florida has 21 million people. This is about 3 million people. So we'd expect about 7 times as many like mass shootings. So it'd be like 7 to 10. So like our numbers aren't even really that off if you actually were to adjust this instead of just going by absolute numbers. Why? Don't ever fucking speak in absolute numbers. If you're making graphs, you're using absolute numbers when you're comparing totally different states with totally different population sizes. It's like so stupid. Kansas, nice.
Look at a state like Alaska. I'm pretty sure it has one of the biggest homicide, or not homicide, it has one of the biggest firearm-related deaths of the world.
Yeah, I've been through the statistics of Anchorage on my channel, and you can see the violence in Anchorage ticks that up. The violence in Anchorage, Alaska, the gang violence in Anchorage,
so you want to
Alaska
use the
in
per capita
particular,
argument.
ticks that up. It's the same thing with like Arkansas. Arkansas also has permitless concealed carry, but when you look at places like Little Rock, Arkansas, that's what's carrying most of the homicide for the entire state. If you take out Little Rock, Arkansas, then you're left with a homicide rate that is very similar to New Hampshire, Maine, Idaho, and some of these other concealed carry.
Sure, but that doesn't change anything I've said other than trying to shoo the violence off onto certain groups of people.
Percent white. Holy shit.
We can't just remove these people.
So the population of Anchorage is 300,000 people. The population of Alaska is, so there's like 400,000 people, 440,000 people in Alaska that are outside of the city of Anchorage. I don't know anything about fucking the Alaskan cities and whatever, so I don't know anything about this. So even this is like a little bit skewed. Like you would expect maybe a little bit less than half the murders to take place in Anchorage compared to the entire state of Alaska, because it has a little bit less than half the population. Well, wait, what was it? Like 300,000 versus... But, okay.
We can't just remove these people from our country. I
never advocated for removing anyone from our country. What I'm saying is, if most of the violence is caused by gang members and people who shouldn't have guns in the first place, who are transferring guns illegally from Indiana to Chicago, for instance, which, by the way, I mean,
yeah, we're also ignoring the fact that like population density and all sorts of other things are going to play factors into like homicides as well. Like a bunch of people living scattered across the countryside probably aren't likely to kill each other, but it's not like we're going to move everybody in the city out to the fucking country.
Are already flowing around in Chicago, bought again, sold again, bought again, sold again. These are illegally obtained firearms just flowing around in Chicago. Then we should find a way to go after the people who are illegally possessing their weapons instead of hindering people who are legally possessing their weapons from obtaining additional ammunition. For instance, there's a new law trying to be passed in California and Connecticut. They're trying to add an additional 50% tax on ammunition. I mean, does that sound like it's going to decrease gun violence to you? These are ridiculous proposals.
I mean, that policy...
They've all tried in London and they're still having problems.
Sure, so the policy of increasing the cost of ammunition doesn't really sound like it would do much to me. That sounds like a pretty stupid policy. But perhaps making it more difficult to acquire a firearm legally in Indiana would reduce the likelihood of a firearm being given to somebody and then travel illegally to Chicago to commit a crime.
Why? Well, I guess here's my question. Why is...
Like I would never... I need to be meaner about nailing people down and forcing people to answer questions. I need to go back to talking over people. I think in the early debate career I had or whatever, I think I used to talk over people a lot more. I need to go back to doing that more. I need to force him to answer that question. Do you agree that if we make it harder to legally obtain a firearm in Indiana, it will be harder to illegally transfer that to somebody to take it to Chicago, right? I should force people to answer these questions instead of letting them just fucking pivot. He does this so much. Everybody does this that I talk to. They always dance away and pivot out of like, You're more confident online rather than in person? No, I feel confident in both scenarios, and I do this online as well. I let people walk away all the time. Look at that religious guy that I debated yesterday. I let him walk. I let people walk away all the time. I don't want to be perceived as like a bully, I guess, but I should stop worrying about it because people say I'm a bully anyway, so I should just fucking own it and do it.
Is Vermont not making New York as dangerous as Chicago? If your theory is correct, that because you can purchase weapons so easily in Indiana and then illegally transfer them from Indiana to Chicago, why is Vermont not making New York as dangerous as Chicago then?
It's possible that the populations of places like Vermont aren't as predisposed towards committing crime as other populations are.
Okay, what about Idaho? Idaho
Probably
to
similar. That
California,
would be my
Seattle.
guess. There are certain spots in the United States where violent crime happens more often than
Let me ask you
other
this.
spots.
Why?
Nowadays, we can't trust statistics about gun laws that are coming from liberals, children of the lie, because they want to take away your rights to bear arms. Why would you trust any reports that they're putting out? Because they're not going to tell the truth. They're children of the lie.
I mean, you have to go by what the official. I mean, if you think that like the entire DOJ is lying to you about gun crimes or gun statistics, I don't know how you would begin to have a reasonable conversation with somebody at that point. You're just talking about how both of your, I guess, feelings are.
Well, you know how corrupt they are today. I mean, we've seen
not aware of
over and
that.
over again with the Great White Hope being in the White House. But would you want to repeal the Second Amendment?
Possibly. I don't know. It would
You
depend.
would want to repeal the Second Amendment?
I mean, yeah, if you could demonstrate that it would seriously curb the amount of, I guess, lives lost in the United States, it might be worth considering.
That's amazing. Would you want to repeal the Second Amendment?
No, because I've seen what happened in London when they took away all their firearms there. And they're having a very big issue there right now with knives.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think, I want to say in 2015, their knife crime per capita was the lowest it had been since 1989. But then over the past couple of years, there's been an uptick in some knife violence. But yeah,
Well, here's from The Guardian. Doctors are calling for the ban of dagger-type kitchen knives. Do you agree
Let's say
with that?
theoretically, let's say that they do advocate for a ban like that. What would be your opposition to it?
I think it's ridiculous to go after the tool that someone uses to kill someone. Then we'll have to, I mean, if we would really have to, because the left, the policies by like the Democratic Party and things like that, the policies are to go after the AR-15, which accounts for about 30 deaths
Sure,
a
so
year
I'm not going to
versus
make,
knives.
AR-15s are scary. I'm not going to make any arguments against them here because they account for a ludicrously low number of deaths in the U.S.
So, but why does the Democratic Party want to only target the AR-15 then?
Because most Democrats have never touched a gun in their entire lives, and the AR-15 looks
I would say
scary.
most politicians
Sure.
in general, but yes.
Democrats are afraid of guns?
Most people are. A lot of Republicans talk about guns as
You
well.
know why, right?
Because people use them to fight for their freedom. I don't know why, Jesse.
Beta.
Oh my God. Here's the Guardian. All secondary schools in
Yeah.
London to be offered knife detectors.
Yeah, I'm not really understanding what the point is of the articles. Are you saying that like having a knife
hashtag
detector?
knife free. What I'm saying is,
Do you think this is bad or?
well, what I'm saying, there's the knife bin, knife turn police, knife amnesty. What I'm saying is they instituted this handgun ban in England and Wales in 1997, I believe it was, 1996.
96, yeah.
And their homicide rate did a nice uptick there.
There's like 186 deaths that were like tallied on due to a pretty extreme event in I think 2002 or 2004.
Oh fuck! There was some. Fuck! I should have remembered the exact event, but there was some terror attack or there was something that happened, and all of those deaths got added until like this 1 year, and it like super fucked the numbers for this graph, and it caused it to skew upwards like really hardcore. I don't remember what the event was. I should have remembered this. Was it the London bombings? The train one?
But now they're trying to ban
remember what it
knives,
was,
is what I'm saying.
I think they're trying to ban all knives. It
After
sounded like it
murder
was
rate
more.
surpasses New York City, London Mayor Sadiq Khan calls for sharper knife control. So they already started their gun control. Now their homicide rates surpass New York City. Now they're trying knife control. And as a matter of fact, Sadiq Khan is even trying to ban cars from driving in
I was
certain
going to ask
areas.
about that.
Hi Destiny, do you think that white people sometimes wrestle with the term
Do you think that white people sometimes wrestle with the term white privilege because it paints them as a bad guy? In my eyes, I wouldn't necessarily say that white privilege is privilege, but just that minorities are underprivileged. I mean, if you want to phrase it that way, yeah, sure.
So
Should they ban knives?
So my primary drive would be to reduce the number of people that are killed.
Would you ban knives,
That's
though?
my primary drive. So if banning the types of violent knives that are used to commit crimes would achieve that end, then yeah, sure.
In England or Europe, the Allah Uba people are killing people now with cars and trucks and things. Should they ban cars and trucks?
I don't think that many people are getting killed by cars.
yeah, they're
No.
trying to ban cars from driving in certain areas. I mean,
Oh,
the
they are?
amount of
I mean, cars
I'd
are already
have to
banned
say
from driving in certain areas. It's a very vague statement. I mean, you can't
It's
drive cars on
but
sidewalks, for
it's
instance.
not. I think that though that is really
You're trying to ban cars from driving in certain areas, like on places that aren't streets. What do you fucking mean?
comparing apples to oranges, though. I mean, I would say that if we just stick on the gun crime, as far as like the gun crime goes in certain areas, like he said that. Well,
in the
if
past
he had
30 minutes, we
to
were
correct
talking about knife crime.
You had to. Well, what I'm saying is they banned handguns, and now they're still having a homicide rate that is very, very high. They just surpassed New York City, which has 900,000 legally owned guns. And they're still having the same issue. Now they're putting metal detectors.
I hate that, like, when I go to, like, usually if I'm trying to prepare for a debate like this, usually what I look for is, like, I want to know. So here's my question. My question is, like, for instance, does owning a firearm in the United States actually convey, like, a protective property onto you? Like, if you have a firearm, does it actually protect you? And so, like, what I look for are large-scale meta-analyses. Like, I want to find a meta-analysis is like where somebody basically takes a whole bunch of different studies, they sort through the methodologies, and then they try to put together like a comprehensive view based on, like 15 studies. It would appear that, firearms do help or don't help, right? But every time I argue against people that want to argue against guns, they're always like, well, if you look at London and New York City, if you look at Chicago, it's always like one city or like fucking like a 10-year period. They always want to go to like some hyper-specific fucking examples. Like, well, what is like the broad what is like the broad trend, or like what can we broadly say? I guess unless you have like a reason to look at like one hyper specific area, it's really fucking obnoxious. I need to be more familiar with like the two cities, I guess, that if we're going to talk about gun violence, we have to talk about fucking Chicago, New York City, and London, are like the only three cities we're ever going to talk about.
In public schools, elementary schools, they're sending people out there to talk to children about carrying knives.
You still haven't demonstrated why any of this is a bad thing.
But I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying they just keep going after the tools that they use. Let's say that they ban all knives. They start having knife amnesty. They start running up into people's houses and grabbing their knives and machetes or whatever sharp object that they are killing people with. You're still going to have the same issue. People in gangs killing each other that are in other gangs. And they're going to be doing that with bats and chains or whatever else they can get their hands on. London demonstrates that perfectly. And I want to touch on something else that you said during the Joe
real
Biggs
quick,
debate.
onto that point, the whole point of using a tool to kill somebody is that the tool works as a form of force amplification, right? I would kill somebody or multiple people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to with a firearm because I can't do it without a firearm. A knife is a similar thing, right? There are multiple people you could kill, or a person you could kill with a knife that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. If there are certain groups of people that are more predisposed towards committing violent acts than other groups of people, then removing force amplification from those people seems like it would achieve some positive end. Are people still going to kill each other with bats or chains or whatever else? Yeah, I'm sure, but that number is probably going to be lower than it was with knives because it's harder to kill somebody with a bat or a chain than it is with a knife. And it's harder to kill somebody with a knife than it is with a firearm, or at least multiple people, depending on the situation.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
The Florida State has new merchandise available. Every purchase.
Australia,
Amazing. The merch is amazing.
I want to touch on something else you said. You said, quote, the gun buyback programs have been successful. Quote, this is your words, homicide rate in Australia decreased because of that. They didn't suffer any more mass shootings. Do you still stand by that quote?
In Australia, I believe that's true, yeah.
So if we go to Australia and we look at the period prior to the gun buyback program, you can see there was virtually 0 mass shootings that have happened. During this time, there was 4, and then after that time, there was none. So if we look at Australia, we look at the homicide rate of Australia per 100,000. You can see that in red here, this is America, this is according to the AIC, their government statistics in Australia, and America's homicide rate in red, Australia's homicide rate in blue. And since the 1996 gun buyback program from 1996 to 2001, their homicide rate per 100,000 remained virtually the same. As a matter of fact, it went from 1.6 to 1.8 in a 6-year period, whereas our homicide rate here in America with no gun amnesty, no gun buyback program, decreased from 7.4 per 100,000 to 5.5 per 100,000. So we had a larger homicide per 100,000 rate decrease in America than they did in Australia with their gun buyback program. So I don't believe that it was actually successful. Not to mention, after the Port Arthur massacre in Australia, Australia now has more legally owned guns in Australia than they did before the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. So I don't believe that those two things are relatable. I think that there were no mass shootings in Australia before. There was 2, and then they had this gun buyback program, which wasn't targeted at all guns, by the way. It was only certain types of weapons there. And they went back to the same level that they had of mass shootings than they did before. And the guy who committed the mass shooting, by the way, was a deranged lunatic, I believe they said, and they reported on this.
Before we move back, I'm curious, did you create that graph, or did somebody create it for you?
This is, I created this based on the AIC statistics, crime stats, AIC.gov. You can go to that link.
I've been to the link. I'm curious why you ended at 2001. You took a 5-year period here and tried to establish a trend.
Well, because from the 1990s.
So
somebody created it for you.
His graph that he shows me stops right here at 2001, this high point, and he cuts it off immediately, and they show a larger one here. But if you go 10 years further, this violent crime rate actually does fall further. But he cuts his graph off at 2001 because he's trying to play a little fucking tricky bullshit.
This is, I created this based on the AIC statistics, crime stats, AIC.gov. You can go to that link.
I've been to the link. I'm curious why you ended at 2001. You took a 5-year period here and tried to establish a trend.
Well, because from the 1990s, like I've said before, many different intellectuals have discussed the crime in the 1990s being higher in every Western country, being high. For some reason, they don't know why, but in every Western country, crime was higher in the 1990s. So because the gun amnesty program, the gun buyback program.
When you say crime was higher in the 1990s, compared to what? Because crime in the U.S.
not higher. Crime increased. We saw an increase in crime in the 1990s in that decade.
Because it's very low from the 60s, for instance. Even
no, actually, since the 1960s, violent crime has increased about 3 times.
Would you make any changes?
I think we're lower. I think we're lower now than we were in the 60s. I think I misspoke there. Violent crime today, I think, is lower than it was in the 60s. I think it peaked towards the 90s and then got down. I'm not sure, actually. I need to go back and look at that. I don't remember.
On this graph, real quick, just because I'm very familiar with these numbers, I'm very curious why you did a 5-year here instead
because
of
the gun amnesty only lasted 6 weeks in Australia. So you would assume that you would see an immediate effect.
Not necessarily.
Why not?
Well, firstly, because there were other programs that were implemented afterwards, different types of gun buybacks and whatnot. And if you
follow that, there also could have been a year that had just more violence than average. So you would look like, for instance, maybe they did a gun buyback and the death would have been like 4.0, but now it was only 2.0. That was as similar as before. This is why you need more than 1 or 2 years to establish a trend. God, this is so fucking stupid.
And we can see a larger decrease in America. We went from 7.4.
But I'm pretty sure that's not true because if you go like 5 years out on the Australia side there, I'm pretty sure that the homicide rate drops to like a 1.1.
What I'm trying to say is that the gun amnesty was pretty much immediate. It was a 6-week period of gun amnesty. It was what they call gun amnesty over there, which is a weird name for it, but gun buyback program. And so you would expect the results to be immediate.
And just to be clear, the graph that he's showing me right now stops right here. Also, why the fuck are there 2 different y-axes on this fucking graph. But okay.
What I'm arguing is that in a 6-year period, their homicide rate actually went from 1.6 to 1.8. It's probably lower now. It's probably somewhere around like 1.5 per 100,000 or something like that. But we saw a larger decrease per 100,000 in homicides in America since that 1996 period. Now, if we go all the way back to
Oh, this is the full graph. So this is the, this should be for Australia. So he cuts his graph off like right here at 2001. But if you follow it, right, like 10 years out, well, okay, shit, violent crime falls to like half of what it was before, right? But okay, dude.
the 1950s, violent crime, and this is one of the quotes that you said in the Joe Biggs debate, which
it's
is
super scummy. Stuff like that, when I see people do things like that, it makes me really fucking scared, because I don't know if I can trust any fucking thing you show me. If I know some of the stats that you're citing, and I know that you're playing tricks with them, then I don't know if anything you're telling me is true, right?
actually statistically incorrect. You said that violent crime is lower than it was in the 1960s. That's not true.
Yeah, I think I'm looking more towards the 80s is what I was thinking of.
Okay, yeah, because in the 1960s, we had rape per 100,000, assault per 100,000, robbery per 100,000, and many other types of violent crime, aside from murder, were 3 times less per 100,000. This is the reason why your mother and your father always like to say, we could leave our doors unlocked and stuff like that, things that boomers say. But anyway.
House.
Are you for gun buyback or not?
I mean, if it's been demonstrated to work, and I believe most of the consensus around Australia was that their gun buyback program was largely successful. I mean, their violent crime did drop quite a bit. Maybe not in the immediate, like 4 or 5 years afterwards, but after that it did.
Amazing. What would you make any changes in the gun laws in America?
Because of the way that America's shifting right now, I would concede that probably background checks at the very least. I mean, I'm completely okay with the DROS program that our state has. Like Orange County, it's very easy for me to be able to purchase a weapon. I don't like the fact that they have made the AR-15s in the state where you have to break them open at the top to be able to retrieve the magazine. I think all those things are stupid. I think our politicians, and this touches on what Destiny says, most of our politicians probably never touched a gun in their entire life, and they don't understand it.
Right.
I think that these things are just ridiculous, and they're a hindrance, and I'm really upset about these things. Adding 50% of tax onto ammunition, not allowing me to go to Bass Pro Shops in Las Vegas and bring home boxes of ammo that I can take to the range and have fun with. I think that it's ridiculous. And the fact that our politicians care more about 30 deaths a year by AR-15s than they do the thousands of homicides that criminal aliens commit is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling.
Would you make changes in the gun laws in America?
Yeah, I think giving the ATF more teeth would probably be better for them to actually have a real database to manage the purchase and sale and flow of firearms to the country would probably be positive.
Really?
Enabling the CDC to study gun violence more. I think they were authorized to do like a single study would probably be beneficial as well, so we get better answers on how to curb gun violence in the U.S.
That's amazing. I'm not for the background check.
Okay.
Because I don't trust the people who's getting the information. Because if they can get the information on you and know you have guns in your home, how many you have, how can you trust those people? They can't be trustworthy.
I mean, especially like if the FBI really wants to know, or if like the NSA really wants to know, they probably have ways of finding that out anyway.
But see, I don't trust the background check. Because you really can't trust government these days.
And you also can't trust crazy people with guns, so I mean.
That's why I want to have my own gun so that.
Yeah, demonstrably that doesn't seem to be true. Like the myth of the self-defense handgun doesn't seem to be borne out in any of the literature either. Just owning a firearm doesn't make you safer. If anything, it makes you more likely to kill yourself with it.
No, that's not true. When I was growing up.
Actually, the CDC did do a study. I don't know if you're aware of the CDC study that was in 2013. Are you aware of that study?
What about it?
Well, Barack Obama it authorized the CDC to do the largest study into gun violence. Are you aware of the statistics that came out of that study?
Pineapple Shade is now a tier 3 subscriber.
How does he even maintain his credibility when he's caught doing that? Because people don't actually care about the data. They just want stuff that kind of supports their points.
Maybe? I don't remember.
Oh, this is out of Forbes magazine.
Okay.
This particular writer says, quoting the CDC research, almost all national survey estimates indicate that defensive gun uses by victims are at least as common as offensive gun uses by criminals, with estimates of annual uses ranging from about 500,000 to more than 3 million in the context of about 300,000 violent crimes involving firearms in 2008. So if we turn this into a graph here out of the CDC, we're looking at the high number, and I realize this is the high number, 3 million defensive gun uses per year versus 200,000 offensive gun uses per year, according to the study that the CDC did in 2013. And this is the same exact year that Barack Obama changed the definition of a mass shooting to 3 or more people killed during that mass shooting. So you can research this for yourself. I'm not asking you to believe me.
It has no bearing on what I said, though. Having a self-defense handgun doesn't necessarily, just because more of them were used doesn't necessarily mean the outcomes were beneficial for the people using them, or that the amount of violence that those people were exposed to did increase as well.
There's 2 million homes that are broken into every single year, right? And I think about almost half of them where someone is actually at home.
Sure, and for things like property crime, if you defend yourself with any weapon besides a gun, the outcomes are actually more beneficial than if you use a gun to defend your property.
Well, I mean, not according to the CDC study.
That study doesn't say anything about whether or not you had a successful defense of your home. It just shows how many times those firearms were used.
Well, those things aren't recorded.
They absolutely are recorded.
No,
self-defense handgun use is very commonly studied, and it's something that's been pretty widely analyzed by a lot of people.
According to the CDC, it could be any.
So, of over 14,000 incidents in which victims were present, 127 involved with self-defense gun use. STG is more common among males in rural areas away from home, against male offenders, against offenders with a gun. After any protective action, 4.2% of victims were injured. After self-defense gun use, 4.1% of victims were injured. In property crimes, 55.9% of victims who took protective action lost property. 38.5% of self-defense gun use victims lost property, but 34.9% of victims who used a weapon other than a gun lost property. I haven't been able to find data that shows that self-defense handgun usage is actually like a good thing in the U.S. I've never seen recent data that actually supports this topic ever. I just haven't found it.
Anywhere from 3 million, it could be as high as 3 million defensive gun uses versus 200,000 offensive gun uses.
Sure. So again, it's not answering the question that you're trying to say that it's answering. Whether or not those gun uses were successful, whether or not those gun uses led to increased violence against the people using them, or whether or not an alternative tool would have been just as beneficial or more beneficial, which seems to be the case, isn't really answering the fact that a lot of people use guns
subscriber.
Thanks.
in their homes.
Why are you worried about the lives lost by guns and not concerned about the lives lost by criminal aliens, for instance?
Fuck! Why do I let him pivot? Oh, I hate him so much. He fucking pivot.
Isn't really answered by the fact that a lot of people use guns to defend their homes.
Why are you worried about the lives lost by guns and not concerned about the lives lost by criminal aliens, for instance?
Why am I not concerned? I am concerned about the lives lost by criminal
Why
aliens.
are you advocating for policy changes surrounding the gun issue, but not advocating for policy changes surrounding the immigration issue, for instance?
We'll ignore the fact that this is a complete and total non sequitur. But I mean, I don't know what kind of illegal immigration policies are.
You said in your debate with Joe Biden.
Hold on.
Here are some of my exploited labor dollars. Down with capitalism.
Thanks, buddy.
Biggs, this is your quote. There's 40,000 homicides by guns every single year. Do you still stand by that quote?
I don't believe I said that. If I did, I misspoke. I believe it's around 10 to 12,000 homicides per year, about 20,000
That's 3 times
suicides.
less than the flu. Do you think that we have a gun violence epidemic in this country? The flu kills 30,000 people a year.
Okay, and
So
we
if
also
there's-
have flu shots. I don't understand what the
Well, I'm
point
just
is.
saying, if there's 10,000 homicides by guns each and every year,
Okay, and 20,000
mostly
suicides.
perpetrated by gang members.
Okay, 20,000 suicides that are generally perpetrated by gang members.
Well, yeah, but they use it because the gun's there. They can hang themselves. We don't even top the top 10 for
Yeah,
suicides.
what
per
you just said
100,000.
was very true. They use it because it's there. Having a firearm in the home makes you more likely to kill yourself with it just by
That's
virtue
not
of
going to
owning
stop them from committing suicide.
But it does. The numbers bear that out. If you have a firearm in the home,
The
you're
top 10, Japan is number 7 for suicides per 100,000. They hang themselves in forests out there. We don't even top the top 10 in suicides per 100,000 in this country.
That's good. I'm not trying to make top 10 lists for how many people kill themselves in the U.S. Just
Right,
because
but
we're not
what
on
I'm
the
saying
worst
is the
part of the
gun
list
being
doesn't.
there isn't going to stop them from killing
But it
themselves.
does. It's
They
basic
have
human
mental-
psychology. If you would put a button next to a person's desk and they could push it to kill themselves, a lot more people would probably do it when they're having a bad day as well.
I would say that probably
Let me
some
ask this
people
because-
would.
let me
So
ask
being
this
able to
because
pull the
I'm
trigger on a
asking-
gun is much easier than tying a rope up and hanging
Okay, but
yourself.
that doesn't
Let me
mean
ask
that we
this.
should hinder people who
Oh my
are
gosh,
okay
hold
with
on.
guns. The
One
vast
minute.
majority. Go ahead.
When I was growing up, there were no gun laws that we have today. And when I turned 15, they gave me my first rifle. No one ever taught me how to use it or told me not to or how to or anything. I went out and I used my rifle. I killed a squirrel or something in a tree. And yet you didn't have the gun, the type of
shootings,
people,
nothing.
mass shooting and all that's happening then. And guns was everywhere when I was growing up. What's the difference between then and now?
There's a lot of differences
Like what?
between then and now.
Like
I mean,
what?
economic disparity, the differences between.
Well, we were poor. I grew up in a house that
Yeah,
had
but the amount of. The
10
amount
rooms
of.
top.
Sure,
My
the amount
bathroom.
of.
Have you ever used the bathroom outside?
Yeah.
My toilet was outside.
Okay.
And so that's poor, right?
I don't know. It
No,
depends.
no, that would be considered poor if your toilet is made outside.
If you live in, I mean, like I've been on farms where they have like outhouses and stuff. I wouldn't consider them
And so
poor,
we
but
did-
sure.
But the thing about it, we didn't have the money that people have today. Why did we see this type of stuff happening then? It was very, very rare. What's the difference between then and now?
That's a very complicated question.
You don't know the answer to that?
Well, I mean, like there's differences in the structures of families. There's differences in cultural attitudes towards firearms. There's probably differences in the amount of gangs that are present. There's differences in the in the structures of cities, access to guns, access to drugs, access to people that are likely to kill each other over either of these things. There's a ton of differences between then and now.
What do you say the difference between then and now?
I would say that there's. I have theories. I don't have any statistics to back this up.
I don't like that you can give a basic ass bullshit ass answer and sound stronger here. Like, what's the difference between life in America now versus 70 years ago? Like, fuck, I don't know. There's like a million fucking differences. How the fuck am I supposed to answer that question?
A solid fact. I have theories that, for instance, the white Americans, non-Hispanics, they were at 5%, I think, of children born out of wedlock. Today we're at 30%. Black Americans went from 22%. Today they're at 73%. Hispanic Americans upticked as well. We have a massive influx of changing demographics since the 1950s. So I think that the sense of community, the sense of consistency, the sense of, technology, there's all sorts of things. You have children who were prescribed with psychotropic multi-class drugs.
And now his answer is that there were more white people, and now there's not enough white people, and the non-whites are killing each other too much.
Drugs were only, I think, 2% back in the 1950s versus today, where it's almost a quarter of all children who are prescribed with psychotropic drugs, Adderall, because the parents aren't willing to just deal with their energy that these kids have and shove an iPad in their face. I think there's a big, huge cultural change, and these are things that I would like to target. I would like to target the hive that is creating these things, like mass shooters and things like that. Because if you look in the 1950s, there was no mass shootings. We had the same handguns with the same amount of ammunition in the magazines, and people weren't walking into school shooting each other. 90% of all the mass shootings that happened in this country are perpetrated with handguns. We had the same. I have a 1911 from that era that works better than my Beretta PX4 Storm that I just bought like 2 weeks ago. So I think that there's.
Berettas are shit.
I think we have to target those things. I think we have to focus on the cultural decline and lots of
The
different things.
cyber cactus
Yeah, of course.
is
I just don't see
now
why
a
it can't be
tier
multifaceted. I
1
think-
subscriber.
Thanks.
There are absolutely problems that we have today in regards to people getting along with each other, in terms of the happiness levels that people experience, in terms of our disconnectedness from society. You see a lot of people that are discontent with that. And yeah, definitely you can target things like that. You can also find ways to keep people from hurting themselves.
When I was growing up, the difference is between then and now is that they had families. Men and women got married, they raised their kids, they set a good example.
Sure.
It was unheard of for black on black violence or for whatever reason. And black people now, most don't have more values, they don't have families, they don't have a sense of self-control. And that's the reason that the gun issue is happening right now. Because if they had values, if they had parents, if they had love in their hearts, they wouldn't be killing each other. Would you agree to that?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So why not change that? Rebuild families, rebuild men, rebuild families, teach morality by example.
Yeah,
Why take away the innocent people guns and not change the hearts and minds of the people?
Again, you can do both.
You wouldn't need to do the second one if you had more values in order. You just need to do one. Rebuild families so that these kids would see the right thing.
When you talk about like rebuilding families, this is like a very complicated, again, a multifaceted. You're talking about an intersection between the criminal justice system because people that are locked up in jail have a much higher chance of committing violent acts in the future or having their life go awry in the future. You're talking about access to wealth. People that are wealthier tend to get married earlier. You're talking about other forms of access to wealth. Wealthier people tend to be able to afford contraception or abortion or have more means.
Have you gotten checked for cancer after being so close to that binder?
You don't need all that if you're married.
These are all but I'm saying like marriage isn't something that people just randomly decide to do. There are a lot of conditions that will predict whether somebody will.
Well, they don't need to have children until they get married. If they
people
don't get
generally
married,
don't have children out of wedlock because they need to. It's usually because it's an accident or because of lack of.
No, not accident.
I would say there's a big cultural aspect to it nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the gang members, this is the gang members per 100,000 people by race in America, and you can see that the black and Hispanic are at 1,159 per 100,000, Hispanics at 1,110 per 100,000, and the white non-Hispanic are at 78.97 per 100,000, and Asian is like negligible. When you look at the statistics, the East Asians, like the Chinese,
J92 is now a tier 1 subscriber.
they're just like trying to learn piano, violin, and I mean, so there's a huge cultural aspect that I think that goes, and I think that a lot of this is perpetrated by Hollywood. Like as far as the black man, I was talking to Uncle Hotep, right? And he was talking about how Hollywood, they prop up blacks being in gangs and selling drugs and stealing cars and all sorts of different things.
How are you able to list out all these points on the spot? Because conservatives are literal NPCs that repeat the same arguments over and over and over and over again. It becomes pretty easy to remember them after a while.
I think that's a big issue. Like we should not be propping that up on a pedestal and having that be like something to strive to later on in life. See, different cultures like the Asians, they don't have like they're not shunned in their little community or their little group at school for talking articulately or something like that. But I know that I've talked to Black Americans and they say that they're shunned for talking like a white guy or something.
Yeah,
so these are big issues that I think that.
I mean, if you're going to argue for greater representation of minorities in media, I absolutely 100% will get on board with that. I think
oh my God, he gets so triggered here. I love this point. Hold on.
Big issues that I think that.
I mean, if you're going to argue for greater representation of minorities in media, I absolutely 100% will get on board with that. I think that's an absolutely.
Here we go with the
I mean, what you just said, I 100% agree. Representation of minorities in media is very important. If your only role models in media are gangsters or something like that, then yeah, you're probably.
We should be saying that that's a bad thing.
Sure, I generally agree with that. Also, keep in mind that media doesn't just tell us, what to do. In some ways, media is a reflection of who we are. It's not like everybody in the country was chill and then all of a sudden media just created these horrible images for people to strive to or aspire to. It's more like those tend to be a reflection of the times in and of themselves. When you look at a lot of people point to things like black culture and why don't they trust the cops? Well, because a lot of them got the shit kicked out of them by the cops in the early 1900s. Through not all the time.
No,
when you're talking about like pre-segregation and whatnot.
And that's a lie too. That was made up.
Okay.
Really,
well,
I was there. That was made up.
Didn't you live under Jim Crow?
Yeah, I grew up under Jim Crow.
And you could walk into a school with white children and learn from the same teachers.
I never wanted to.
Why not?
I was satisfied with
you were satisfied with your shittier schools, with your worst
Jesse?
teachers, and your less funding available to you? You were satisfied with the worst institutions available to you that
We
didn't
didn't
have
have
the
all.
same
It wasn't that way. They've been lying to you, I'm telling you. Let me ask you, John Adams said, and I want both of you to respond to this.
Okay.
John Adams said the Constitution was made to govern a moral and righteous people. Are the racists in America equally moral and righteous, and would addressing immorality within these groups help the gun violence?
I mean, every group in America is.
Is John right, though, about the righteous, and John Adams right about the righteous and moral people?
Sure.
He's right about that.
That we need righteous people to govern?
Right. We need
given that we have a democracy and our.
He said that the Constitution was made to govern a moral and righteous people. Was he right about that?
Probably, yeah.
You're not sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure democracy needs a righteous people to, otherwise they would vote for horrible things, right?
What do you say about that?
Yeah, I would agree with John Adams' statement there.
And are the racists in America equally moral and righteous, and would addressing those issues within these groups maybe end the violence that they're having?
I don't think any two racial groups in America are equal to one another because their histories are very different from one another. And then addressing moral problems
as well.
Yeah, we can get to that, I guess. But I mean, addressing moral issues. I mean, yeah, you can do that to some extent.
Would that make a difference, though?
I mean, like it depends on what you mean by address moral issues. Typically, just telling people to act better doesn't usually do much. You usually have to, go a little bit farther with it. So, like James suggested, greater representation of media can be a way to do that. Different types of programs, like after-school programs, stuff related to that, can help people, give people role models.
That's not going to help, though. The blacks have midnight basketball. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Midnight basketball is not working. They go down on the court now and kill each other.
Yeah, no, in Chicago, there was just a story recently that was very, very concerning to me.
Chicago.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago originally. And they were shooting up the funeral of the gang member who got shot by them. They went and shot the funeral up.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't it?
No, really, that's pretty sad. Do you feel like you're biologically predisposed to commit criminal activities, you or your family?
What does that mean?
Well, so James suggested that maybe biologically you might have an inclination as a black person to be more violent than a white person.
We didn't then, but I believe they do now.
That evolved in one generation? All the genes changed?
That's not what I said. I said that there's biological aspects that certainly lead to people committing more crime. So there was a Harvard study on, for instance, and I'm not saying, we're talking about on average here. There was a Harvard study.
Not me.
Right, not just. Well, we can look at the Rushton-Jensen study. The Rushton-Jensen study.
What a coward! Why not tell him to his face that he's a subhuman fuck? Like, you're black, you're biologically less than me. Like, if that's the argument I'm gonna put forth, like, at least say it to Jesse's pretty harmless. I don't think he'd hurt you for it. In fact, fucking based on what this guy said in the past, he might fucking agree with you.
Said that, and even academics agree that a lower average IQ makes you more predisposed to commit crime. We look at the Port Arthur massacre shooter. He had a 70 IQ. Would you agree that a lower average IQ makes you more predisposed to commit crime?
I don't know if that's true offhand, but I could believe that, sure.
Yeah, Rustin Jensen study. So if we look at the 100 years of IQ data that we have this data, 100 years of IQ testing, we'll see a difference in the average IQ of Black Americans, average IQ of white Americans, average IQ of Hispanic Americans, average IQ of Asian Americans, with Asians at the very top. And so I think that we can find a correlation. There might not be a direct correlation of why Asians commit like almost no crimes, or East Asians, and why they have the highest SAT scores, and they're suing Harvard right now because of affirmative action. I would say that there's some correlation that we could talk about there without being called racist, and all these different things. I think we can talk about those things.
Well, the problem is you weren't talking about correlation. You were talking about a causal effect of your race impacting your IQ.
I'm not saying no. What I'm saying is we look at the homicide rate, the weapons violation rate per 100,000. The homicide rate is the same.
When you start saying biology and tying that to IQ, you're talking about causal effects. You're not correlating it.
Rankings. Black Americans 130 per 100,000, Hispanics 42 per 100,000, whites 23 per 100,000. That's according to FBI data. And Asians are like not even on a chart. They don't even register on the chart. So I'm saying if we look at these things, you go to the greatschools.org, and because I have 3 children, and I look for schools when we were buying our house, and you go to greatschools.org, and if you go to the richest area, the richest district, or the poorest district, and you're always going to see those same rankings. And when they talk about like the Rustin Jensen study, you look at James D. Watson, who discovered the DNA was the double helix. He talked about this a lot. And you can find some sort of correlation that we're not allowed to talk about that for some reason nowadays.
Well, we're allowed to talk about correlations. You keep saying this word correlation, but you were talking about was a causal link.
Well, is that not biological? What I'm saying is
no,
IQ
not necessarily.
biological?
Not necessarily.
Well, they say
IQ?
that up until 18 it is.
Well,
Who IQ do you believe is the highest, black or white?
Right now in the United States, probably white people.
And why is that?
Greater access to wealth, greater access to education. We
That's
have
not
a
it.
far different.
No.
Do you think it's because of the genes?
I think it's because of. Well, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, we all evolved in different
I think
continents.
because of yeah.
How can you say if we all evolved in different continents that there's not biological difference? I mean, look, you're not going to see many Asians going in the NBA, and there's a reason for that. It's because of physical differences. Black Americans are they're more athletic, inherently, biologically. No one disputes that.
There are plenty of people that dispute a lot of these things. It is very hard to tease out a biological causal relationship between somebody's genes and a highly polygenic trait like IQ. I understand the desire.
You're disputing the person who discovered that DNA was.
Who's been largely also discredited by the entire academic.
That guy that discovered the double helix or whatever is in like in huge shit. I don't think anybody in the academic world takes his like statements on IQ or whatever personally. Not to mention that this is a fallacious appeal to authority. Just because you discover the double helix doesn't necessarily make you a qualified intelligence researcher, but.
You're disputing the person who discovered that DNA was.
Who's been largely also discredited by the entire academic community. There are hundreds of geneticists that have signed on to these really broad letters saying that they're very uncomfortable.
Rustin Jensen, Richard Herrnstein, Charles Murray, the guy who discovered DNA effectively, discovered DNA was a double helix.
These people are all making, first of all, Charles Murray has no background in biology whatsoever. Yeah, IQ data, well, hold on. IQ data doesn't necessarily mean there's a causal relationship. Like you keep pointing out how good Asian Americans are compared to Black Americans without even thinking for a second, well, the history of these two people in this country is incredibly different. Black people were brought over 200, 250 years ago on slave ships against their will from their homes to the United States to live here under slavery. And then under legalized segregation, and now for the past 60, 70 years, we're kind of starting to right the ship. Asian Americans, a lot of them largely. This is a single question. Asian Americans largely immigrate over here because they have the money to do so from China or other countries. And
how do you explain that blacks were smarter than Jim Crow law than they are today? How do you explain that?
It's a very complicated question.
That's not complicated.
So you
London didn't have Jim Crow. London didn't have Jim Crow laws.
I mean, I can only side with the majority of the academic community that is incredibly uncomfortable making the assertion that biology is the reason why certain groups of people are more violent than other groups of people.
Yeah, that academic community is the same academic community that got Brown University to delete a study on rapid onset gender dysphoria because it might hurt someone's feelings. Okay, this is the same academic community that props up gender dysphoria as something cool to be nowadays, completely denying science. This is a science denial.
No, first of
all,
there
are biological differences between men and women. You have people who are on your side of the aisle who walk off the stage.
Okay, so firstly, if we want to deny academic research or academic literature, we can only engage in conspiracy theory, which is something I'm not interested in doing. I can only go by what the literature says. Secondly, if you want to talk about science denial,
I only go by what the literature says.
Sure, and if you want to go by science denial, I mean, the APA has made pretty clear statements regarding transgender individuals or gender dysphoria. These aren't fantastical things. They might make conservatives uncomfortable, but just because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean the science isn't real.
The APA, once within their study on gender dysphoria, said it was a mental condition.
Gender dysphoria is considered a mental condition.
So why are we propping up a mental condition?
We don't prop up a mental condition.
Why
we try
are we
to alleviate.
To help these people with high suicide rates and not say that it's okay to.
So we do try to help them. And the number one way that the APA suggests to relieve gender dysphoria is through things like hormone therapy and sex reassignment surgery.
I would say that that's probably not the best. There's mothers who are crying.
I can only point to what the literature says.
They're coming home with their breasts chopped off and their ovaries removed.
So nobody chops off their breasts randomly, and that's not how sex reassignment surgery works. They don't. It's not happening.
I gotta ask this.
This is absolutely happening. These are mothers who have told their stories.
Well, I mean, like the outcomes are very clear that sex reassignment surgery and hormone therapy produces largely positive results.
Why are we propping this up in our culture, in our media, and our Hollywood? If it's the highest, if they have the highest.
These guys are so triggered. I hate it, dude. Oh my god.
That decreases once they've experienced sex reassignment surgery or hormone therapy.
Okay, guys.
Anyway, go ahead. I don't even know how we got onto this particular subject.
Because you brought let's hear it. By the academic.
I have you back about that, but let me ask you this. You're a gamer, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
And games mean that you sit around all day playing on the computer thing, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
How old are you?
30 years old.
You keep asking this question.
So how do you reconcile or deal with the fact that games are very violent, right? Is that a little problematic for you?
No, that doesn't. There's no
Is that an
studies
issue?
that show that.
I've
they
never
be
seen
shooting?
any. I don't
play
think it's
this,
supported anywhere that the idea that violent video games are predictors of violent behavior for children. I've never seen that.
Do you play games too?
I play games with my children. Sometimes I play video games, but there's
don't
no.
they have a lot of violence in those games? Like
yeah, but I
shooting
don't
and killing?
agree. I don't think that. I don't think that that's going to cause someone to go kill someone.
But my question is, how are you able, Destiny, to be shooting and killing on the games, but you don't want to do it in real life if you had to?
Well, he did pull a gun out on stream one time.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we've talked about guns on stream before, yeah.
No, but you thought someone was breaking into your home, didn't you?
It's possible. I don't remember. This might have happened.
And you pull your gun out?
Well, that's what he's supposed to do.
I'm not sure. I don't know. We talked about guns a lot on stream, yeah, but no, I've never killed anyone before.
So you don't want to ban certain types of weapons? Because I heard you say that before. You said that you don't think that that would do anything.
I mean, like the obsession over AR-15s is very dumbfounded. It's very stupid.
So you do okay. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. I think that it's mostly politicians in general, on both sides of the aisle.
And the restrictions that are on AR-15s here are very stupid.
They're stupid. Have you seen the?
I've shot with them with the weird clanky bullshit.
Yeah. Illegal aliens are bringing in truckloads of guns and drugs and all this things, and these things are ended up in the black communities and urban.
I don't know if illegals are bringing them. I mean, we sell plenty of guns legally here. I mean, there's tons of firearms we can just buy in the United States.
Are you for putting up a big, beautiful wall around the border? Because if you did, that would stop a lot of the guns from coming.
I don't think that would stop a lot of the guns. A lot of these just come in via
You're not for the wall?
A lot of these guns come in via port of entry, via sea, via air. Like
I know, but the ones that are coming across illegally without the wall being there, are you for putting up the wall and stopping that?
I don't think the wall would help much.
Are you for the wall?
No.
Are you?
I am for the wall. Yeah, the statistics have showed that the wall in Hungary is 99.9% effective. The wall in Israel was 99.9%.
The borders are far smaller in those countries than in the U.S.
Why do you think normal?
Right. Well, I mean, we're not talking about a wall around the. There's many natural barriers where we don't need a wall or a barrier in place. But
why do you think, in closing, why do you think just human beings don't have the common sense to know that a wall works?
I think that, I don't know, I mean, I break with many people who are supposed to be on my side ideologically too on many different issues. So I think that a lot of people are just very tribal. Well, I know. I think that some people are just very tribal. I don't know. I think that maybe they do agree. I mean, this is something that even Chuck Schumer said under the Barack Obama administration. He said in 2001 we were able to build a barrier around our southern border, which drastically will reduce people coming over here illegally. Chuck Schumer means, and now he's talking something completely different now that Trump's in office. So it's just a tribal thing.
Why do you think regular human beings don't have sense enough to know that a wall works?
I think a regular human being, the sense is that it would work, but it's when you dig into a little bit more and you apply a little bit of critical thinking.
It's against Trump.
Well, no, it's because
I feel
like I make really good eye contact with people when I talk. I think that's his strength. I don't know if it's because he's sticking through his binders much. Jesse seems to do a good job as well. I feel like my eye contact is really good.
The majority of people that are
legally,
legally,
white hole, right?
No,
yeah.
The wall is a highly impractical idea. I mean, like most of our huge seizures, I think, was it like the largest seizure? I want to say it was fentanyl-related drugs just happened at a port of entry, like within the past couple of weeks, I think. I remember it was fentanyl or marijuana.
Yeah, mostly the drugs that come over in the
coming through the port of entry. It's not like people are fast and furious driving like in the desert.
I will say this one last thing: 487,000 border apprehensions just in 2017 alone, the fiscal year.
Amazing! Isn't that amazing?
Sure.
Amazing.
All right, amazing.
My final question: did you have fun?
I always have fun.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, it's fun here.
Right on. Do you like him now?
I mean, we disagree a lot.
I don't know, but I'm sure outside of
You didn't know he was that smart, right?
Yeah, we've spoken before.
Oh, you have? Oh, you guys know each other?
Yeah, briefly. We
went like, I don't know, some other stream or something. I can't remember. It was like a year ago or something.
Oh, really? It's amazing how smart, white, straight, heterosexual Christian men are.
Asians too, apparently, right?
Thank you guys for coming.
I'm glad that we can all talk about this. I'm glad that you can, have your show. It's a good show. I'm glad that you have your show and stuff like that. So.
And I'm glad you're out there too, man. Aren't you glad he's there?
I like all points of view to be represented.
Well, you're happy he's there.
I think this is a good.
I'm not sure. I would have to dig more into his content. I don't know.
I'm happy you're there.
All right.
Thank you all for tuning in. I absolutely appreciate it. Don't forget to like, follow, tweet, subscribe, and share. And we have all types of perks on the Father's Day, so don't forget to support that as well. And thank you.
I should have went hard on him for being racist. I should have called out that more, I think, because he's basically playing the race realist card here, right?
From me about this show. Any show, but especially this one. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next time on the Father's.
This was the edited version? Yeah. But I think they kept most of it. It seems like what they mostly kept was the biggest edits, I think, were like the adding the graphs or whatever. This guy acts like the Bill of Rights doesn't exist. It's almost like the Bill of Rights were amendments to the original Constitution that can also be changed.